Katie Kutler, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Derek Batman.
Very good morning. So you opened Kaffe KARMA a little less than a month ago. How you feeling?
I feel really good. I feel like people keep asking me this question. They're like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And I think part of it is like total delusion. Like you're just so tired. You're running on fumes. You're managing like 20 different parts of your brain and things that need to happen and future things. And you're also just like trying to soak in that things are awesome and things are like coming to fruition. But I'm tired. Like I'm not gonna lie, I'm really tired but I'm not drained. Like I'm tired, but I'm not drained. I have like so much in the tank still. But I'm tired and things are really good.
Yeah, well, it's funny when people are, inquiring like that for somebody that's starting a business, moving a location, right? To making some sort of like major change in their life. I think part of it is the fact that they're just like genuinely like they care about you and they want to make sure you're okay. But the other part is like, it's like watching a TV show when you're watching someone go through that, because their life in that moment, that could be months long, it is a sight to behold. Like you don't live a normal life. You're up late, you're up early, and you're riding high on coffee, and like life is just like a complete breakdown from what normalcy looks like. And I feel like from an outsider looking in, like it's intriguing. You're like, hey, how are you doing? I'm asking because I genuinely care about you, but also because this is pretty amazing to watch. So, I'm sure that you've been through major ups and downs over the past couple months.
Yeah, I've watched friends have babies, right? And you're about to have a baby. And it's so similar to having a baby. And I think that people are like, there's nothing like having kids. Like, I disagree. Every mom that I've watched, every parenthood that I've watched go through the stages of the pregnancy, like this build up, this excitement, this anticipation, but also the stress and the planning is not much different than what the last 9 months also looked like, and then the baby comes and everything is like, you're constantly tripping over yourself, but it's also magic. Like the whole thing is something that you just want to force yourself to take a step back and slow down and just sit there for a second and be like, I will never get this back. And it's very much so like having a baby. You do it when you're so exhausted, and you do it when you're not exhausted, and you just keep doing it because you're keeping this thing alive. And you also want this thing to grow and, be full of love and light and happiness. And I feel like it's no different,
Yeah. I mean, and to play off that analogy a little bit, I mean, it's when people have a kid, one of the things you hear, and my therapist tells me this all the time, is he's like, I'm like the biggest diva when it comes to sleep. So like, if I've ever had a conversation with somebody about that, it's like, that's my biggest concern as a parent, seriously. And they always say the same thing. They're like, you will thrive in ways that you can't imagine when you have a kid. And I think when you start a business, you could get 3 hours of sleep and you can wake up and it's like, you're ready to go like that. Yeah. How motivation's like a fast burning fuel? Well, passion is like motivation on steroids, and it lasts way longer. And you when you're doing something that comes from like yourself, like your heart, your core, like in creating Kaffe KARMA, like that fuel burns hard and it burns for a long time. So do you feel like that was able to kind of keep you through some of those sleepless nights and some of the fires you had to put out yourself?
Yes. And I mean, I feel like it gets pretty basic that people are like, I'm nothing without my team. But, for so long it was me by myself. And that was twofold. That was, I had this vision. I wanted to be the sole creator and decider, and I wanted this to be mine. So I pushed out as much external support or ideas or visions as I possibly could so that I could stay true to what I wanted. That meant butting out my husband, and that meant butting out my investor/business partner. Like I was like, no, like what you say is not going in my ears. I'm not listening, and I don't want you involved for as long as I possibly do not need you involved. So that was like the first half. And then the second half of the game was like, the team enters the chat,
The team was able to come in the second half here and really provide you with the support you needed. I know my favorite story when we were starting the new location at Hardbat was that I was coaching at our the spot that was up and running, and I had my coach Sean, who runs our entire youth program, came from like a construction background, and I come over to the new building because he had been over there for a couple hours doing work, and we had a half wall that span about 75 feet, and it was basically, it ran from the ceiling to about 8 feet or 10 feet off the ground. And they clearly had a divider in the form of like some sort of a curtain or like rollout that they would use to separate space. And he was hanging from the rafters, and he had knocked this entire wall down in like 3 hours. And I could have cried. Like, I was just like, I was like, you've put in so much work, and I'm not even here right now. And it was just like that moment for me. And that was the first day we were allowed to do any construction. So I'm sure you had moments like that too, where you stepped out of the building and came in, and it was like, oh my gosh, like people are over here contributing so much.
Yeah. And so that like second half thing that I like view this opening of Karma was like the first half, like it needed to be me. There was nobody else that could go in my brain and know what my vision was and know the concept to the degree that I was imagining it. And then in the second half, I pulled in and accepted help. And I think that is underwhelming me so hard to do. Like, I feel like people are like, oh, make sure you let me know if you need help. And I was like, don't you dare tell me if you are willing to help me, because I will take you up on it. I will call you, I will text you, and I'll be like, look, that thing you said, here's the list that I need help with. What can you take off my plate? And I did. There were several people in my life that I don't think they actually expected me to be like, ring, ring, it's me. Here's what I need help with. But in my experience, it was people from the CrossFit community that they were down. I mean, they were the ones doing a lot of the heavy lifting. They were coming to support me in crisis, and I never, ever felt like I owed them anything. And I just cried all of the time because it was just amazing to me how people help, and like people are so good and they want to help. And when they do, it is the most amazing feeling in the world.
It really is. And we're both in this micro niche. I mean, you have this experience, obviously, being married to Max and watching him go through everything with Thrive. Like, what it means to be part of a community and what makes that community special. And like, while you're moving into something that's slightly adjacent to that in, a cafe that becomes, yoga at night. And we'll talk more about that here in a few minutes. But, you have also a very community-centered, service-based business. And so much of that is driven by care for one another. And like, what better way to express that than to have these people help you when you need it the most?
Yeah, it's truly amazing. And I mean, it still happens. Like, we got a fridge delivered last week, and it was like, nothing, no delivery of large equipment goes as easy as people think. It's like, oh, we just need a fridge, just buy a fridge. It's not like that. Like, the fridge was dropped off in the front of our front door, and it doesn't fit through the door. And, who still came with a bunch of hand trucks and made it work was nonetheless than the Thrive community. So it is magical.
That's amazing. How long have you had this vision for Kaffe KARMA?
Since 2016. 2016 was the first time that I envisioned what at the time I was calling a wellness cafe. And I wasn't sure what that looked like, but that was when I was doing my yoga teacher training and my meditation teacher training. And I had just kept journaling like about, I was struggling with orthorexia and some like little eating disorder behavior when it came to health and wellness, and my obsessive compulsive desire to stay thin and whatever else. And yoga really healed a lot of that in my brain and how I viewed myself and, love of myself and love of others and food and all of these things. And I just kept envisioning like, I loved being in coffee shops, and I would just look around and I'm like, this is a community hub. Like, there's people here in their business suits. There's people here that just came from the gym. There's people here that are cozied up, working from home. There's stay-at-home moms. There's people of all different shapes, sizes, walks of life, and they're all existing in this one space for all different reasons. And I used to sit there and watch them, and I was like, what is this space when it's dead? Like, we should do yoga in the evening. Like, we should meditate in the evening. Like, why isn't this community space more of a community? And it just was this like thought that came and go. Like, I didn't really think anything serious of it. I thought maybe it would be something I did when I retired. And like now thinking of that, I'm like, I was fucking crazy. Like, who would do this when they're retired? Like, if they did, I have no idea what type of energy they have or like how crazy they are. But I could never imagine doing this when I'm retired. And I don't know, I just kept coming back to it. Yeah, since 2016.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, I mean, the seeds plant way earlier sometimes. Like I find that whenever I think back about starting a business, running a gym, being a coach, it's like you have these moments of recognition where you're like, okay, you were thinking about this way before you even acknowledge that you were thinking about it. It was just in its infancy, so much so that you couldn't even articulate to a certain degree, like what it is you wanted out of it. You know, and like I always say, like one of the biggest disservices we do to business owners or up and coming business owners is like try to convince them that we've had this whole thing figured out, you know, from the very beginning. It's like, no. Like, listen, like this thing started in like in my mind in a way that like I can't even like capitulate or like talk about at this point. And like now it's gone through a million iterations to get to where it is. Like, but you kind of you have the dream and then you just kind of have to figure it out as you go.
Yep.
Yeah. So a compliment I have to give you is, and I've spent a lot of time with a lot of business owners and a lot of gym owners for that matter. And I think there's a lot of people out there that believe that they know how they want to design their business. And in reality, they should probably just hire someone to do it for them. But in all honesty, like I love the aesthetic of your space. And I feel like that's a gift that you have as a business owner. Where did you come up with the idea for everything?
I was lucky enough that during my yoga teacher training, I became really close friends with a woman named An, and she used to do like fashion styling and interior design things. And, you know, she was, I think, 30 at the time that we became friends, and I was 17 or 18. And when I walked into her house, I was like, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this. It was all black floors, black painted hardwood floors, and white everything else. And it was like, I knew that that was a design that like I liked, but I was so young that I had never been exposed to anything like that. And she changed my entire perception on what it meant to like create a home. And, you know, I think my upbringing was around like, you can't have that around babies. Babies will just trash white. Or like, you know, people make white dirty. And, you know, well, black shows everything. And there's these like nuances and like, you know, kind of like pessimistic ideals around white and black and things being too boring or plain and things like that, whatever. And she completely changed my mind about that. And I was really lucky to, you know, go to Tulum with her and get even more inspiration of like, this minimal but like earthy and clean aesthetic. And I just kept thinking like we just don't have anything like this here, you know, like we don't. And I don't know, I have my own like twists and turns that I've taken into design and things that I value and things that I love, but I took great pride in the fact that I designed that cafe, and I will always design our cafes because it's something that I'm really passionate about now.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the paradoxes with design is that you people can make whatever argument they want about their design being better than another one, but in 20 years, everyone's going to think it's stupid. You know what I mean? Like design changes. Yeah, it changes so fast.
It changes.
Yeah. Well, so you also have like kind of a newspaper theme that you do with the cafe as well. Where did you come up with that idea?
So I kept looking around at the design, and I was, you know, one of the reasons that I wasn't in love with the location at first was because it wasn't old. I love taking an old space, keeping character, and making it look new and clean and fresh. And I was really hesitant to have a brand new space because it feels so new and it feels so cold and like unlived in. And I also had this feeling of like I'm in Greenville. I'm in an area that still has a lot of like old family, old money, old ties to it, a lot of history that hasn't changed much. And we're in this brand new build, and I felt like generations above me were going to be hesitant to accept Kaffe KARMA with open arms, not just because of the name, not just because of the concept, but the fact that it was going to be so white and so like black leather and chrome and new that they were just going to be like, ugh, like I hate this new era and these like, woke minimalists, like all this stuff. I just had all these imaginations of what they were going to say and feel. And I was like, I'm okay with design not being everybody's favorite. There's people that already come in, they're like too much white. They say it to me thinking that I'm not the owner, right? And that's okay. And I know that design isn't the design isn't going to be well received by everybody, but I don't ever want that exclusion to feel like I don't belong here. I can't belong here because there's nothing that makes me feel at home here. And minimalism and white and black leather can feel not as warm and not as homey, especially since we're in this like warehouse type of space. And so I was trying to find ways to make it more homey. And I just was like, I love history. I love learning about what this space used to be like at a ground level, like when it was just grass, like what was this space, And so I started doing this deep dive and I was like, I love vintage newspapers, the way that like they smell and the way that they feel, and the fact that like we still have newspapers being printed, like it's history every single day. And when you open an old newspaper, everything is different. The way people talked, the way that the prices were, what people cared about, what was allowed to be typed and printed in a newspaper that wasn't frowned upon. And just there's so many nuances to it. So I started bringing this theme in there, and I decided to look up like the local like museums and see what the history was in our plaza. And I begged and begged and begged for them to let me use it on our coffee cup. So like you got to see like our coffee cup has the history of Barley Mill Plaza printed on the newspaper. And then I tied in the verbiage to be like, and then it became Kaffe KARMA. And like, here's how it became this like local connection of everyone knows everyone in Delaware, like just spoke to what the space is. So yeah, I just started getting a bunch of old newspapers, and it's been really awesome to actually see older generations come in the space, and that's the first thing that they connect with. And then I watch them start to like sit on fur, and I watch them like sit on a low profile leather sofa, and then they love it, and then they're back the next day, and I'm like, yes, I'm like, you feel at home, and you're here, and you're coming back. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So basically you recognize the fact that, you had concerns around the locals being able to take to such a new building with such a modern aesthetic. Mm-hmm. And you took something that was a piece of history for them and kind of, help draw them into it. So I absolutely love that. Yeah, I had some sense of that you were going with the newspaper theme in part because of the black and white, but also because of the fact that it does kind of like draw in a little bit of history, but I didn't realize that it was so relevant to the local area. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. So obviously you had to overcome a lot of hurdles when it came to like permits, the business, finances, all of those things. And I know that there's just like an endless amount of fires that need to be put out as part of starting a business. But what were some of the self-beliefs that you had to overcome to get yourself to be, in a good headspace and put yourself in a position to be able to make the hard decisions?
I think I've always been a person that leads with so much confidence, to the point where sometimes my confidence is me trying to convince myself that I'm ready and I am capable. I mean, my friends laugh at me because my senior yearbook quote was even something about, while bangs don't look good on everybody, confidence does. And it's funny, it's like a Lauren Conrad, The Hills quote. And the funny part about it though is I am always bleeding confidence. And when I'm not, there's something seriously wrong with me, whether it's my sleep, my nutrition, my like lack of like movement, all those things factor into it. But the self-beliefs, I had tunnel vision for one, but for two, I just made sure that nothing was coming in my ears that was doubtful or pessimistic. And I am still a full believer and somebody that encourages my team to lead with optimism and to always put pessimism on the back burner, no matter what that looks like. If it's somebody complaining about our lids, and my teammate goes, yeah, they really do suck, that is already us leading with pessimism, right? That's not leading with us with like, oh, you're right, I've never noticed that. Actually, I'm going to bubble that up and we're going to get better lids. Like, that's a great point. Like, I've never thought of it like that. Well, all those little things that we do on a day-to-day now and the team is focused on now were things that are the reason why I believe that karma came to fruition. Because at 26 years old, I was talking to my business partner about, thinking our budget was more than half of what it actually came to be, and believed it. And I was like, no, I can keep it at this budget, and I'm going to make this work, and we're going to be wildly successful. And here's all the reasons why I believe that. I was shitting my brains out. Like, you don't actually know if things are going to be successful. If we did, everybody would start a business, like there's so much risk in it. And, not every good idea becomes a, valuable, profitable idea. And we know that on so many different levels. So you have to kind of almost lie to yourself a little bit and lead with outpouring confidence just to get yourself to do the thing. And so that others also buy into what you dream of and what you're trying to go with. And I think that, confidence was the biggest thing.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have confidence in the vision and the belief, because you hit the nail on the head. Like, there is no guarantee when it comes to starting a business. I mean, not for nothing. Like, I think about what would have happened had I moved into a new facility 1 year later and we got hit with a pandemic, like what if you had started this a few years earlier, and like, so sometimes there are external factors that, like, actually all of the time there are external factors that we can't predict, and there's very little certainty involved. So if you're not confident, it's like you stand no chance in this space.
Yep. I mean, it's a brutal owning a business and creating something and taking risks is hard. Like, I don't think that every single person is cut out to do that, and that's okay. It is hard. It tests you in so many different ways. And I think that if you don't fully believe what you want, people know. People can feel it, that you don't believe in yourself or your concept or why you're here on this earth doing what you're doing. If you don't believe in your impact, people can feel it. And I struggled with that as a nutrition coach. Like, I felt like because I wasn't a dietitian, because I wasn't endlessly going to have all this schooling and knowledge, and I didn't know everything in the world, I didn't believe in myself. And I knew that my clients could start to feel that, and that it was holding me back from taking that next step to being better in my business, because I constantly allowed that other voice to come in more than that voice that was going out about how I believed in myself,
Yeah. One of the commonalities I feel like I find in a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs is that the pain of the uncertainty and of the risk is so far outweighed by the pain of the thought of putting the dream aside and doing something that they aren't giving their entire being to, knowing that they gave up, knowing that they didn't allow themselves to pursue their dreams. And I think this is what allows that confidence to really come out, is the fact that what the other side would feel like. That, like, you could never live with yourself if you didn't pursue the dream. Yeah. And again, it's not for everybody. But it's definitely present for people that are starting a business. It has to be. It has to be. Now, what were some of the biggest lessons you learned along the way? Obviously, this was a new venture for you. I mean, this was, you had gotten involved with starting online businesses before. You obviously helped out Max over at Thrive, but this was totally new. What were some of the lessons you picked up along the way?
I'm a firm believer in building your own resume. If you want to start a business or you are an entrepreneur, you know that you want to do something that isn't currently being offered, or you don't want to work for somebody else, I believe that you have to create your own resume. And that's what I spent part of my life unknowingly doing, like dropping out of nursing school and becoming a yoga instructor and going down like holistic nutrition path and working at Lululemon and learning how to like manage a team. and doing like retail and community building within Lululemon. Like I had no idea that was me building my resume. That was like my backup plan and a for now situation, but I made the best out of it. And I constantly approach things as how much knowledge and experience can I soak up in this moment, even if I know that I'm going to quit in 2 months. While I'm here, how can I be present and absorb what I'm going through and what I'm doing? And that's no different right now. Like even as we open Karma, I'm a beginner in so many ways, and I'm allowing myself to learn. Like I'm looking around me and I'm like, okay, what am I learning right now that is going to help me for second location? You know, what experience have I gone through during the construction process that I now know I want to take with me through the second location? And I've constantly turned around and I'm like, I want concept number two very soon, because that that learning and that like soaking in this new information and seeing where I was weak before and knowing how much stronger I am already in some of those like weaker areas motivates me to do this even better tenfold the next time around. Um, so I think the biggest lesson is I'm constantly building my own resume, constantly, and I'm also doing this to learn more all the time. So I think that that's really it.
Yeah, I want to zoom in there a little bit, because one of the things you said, feel like is really a really important point, which is that while you necessarily did, like now in hindsight, like you can recognize the fact that you've been building these skill sets and capabilities through all of your experiences. That was never necessarily the plan, but what the common denominator here was action. Like you realized that nursing was not the direction you wanted to go, and you started taking action on things that you at least found interesting, right? Mm-hmm. And you felt like we're in a better direction for you. And you didn't necessarily know exactly where you were going, but you were building that resume for yourself. And I think, you know, we all to some degree or another can kind of look back and do this, is like look at our life and go, oh, wow, like I didn't realize this skill set was going to apply so well to this thing that I am now doing, but it does. And now you're in a position where you're older, more mature, you've got your footing, you've started a business, and you're like, okay, now I can actually be a bit more strategic about the skill sets that I'm implementing into my life, so that when I open, you know, location 2, 3, 4, whatever else you want to get into, it's like now you can start being a little bit more focused around how you want to build that resume. So what's on the docket then for you? What skill sets are you looking to upload in the next couple of years?
It's so funny. I think I've kind of narrowed it down and what I feel really good in, and a lot of that is team development. I really love team development so much, and Lululemon ignited this fire in me. They do this thing called vision and goals within their team, and they meet up and they talk about your life in 10 years, and you write this blurb about your vision for your life in 10 years, and then you break that into 10-year, 5-year, 1-year goals. And I've loved this about the company because, yeah, like it's retail. It's retail, and you think like, oh, they just do that to get people to like want to stay. And like maybe part of that motive is that people are more vested in the business, that your team feels more connected to the business and why they're there. But I view it as like, as a manager, as an owner, I know what my team wants out of their lives. So then there's no confusion in what the direction of their life is. If I know that Susan on my team wants to become a dietitian in the next 5 years, I know that a large amount of her 1 to 5 years is going to be school focused. It's going to be internships. It's going to be trying to balance their life so that they're not like feeling like all they do is work and school. And that helps me as a manager. Like, I know this person shouldn't be working every single day of every single weekend. And also, how can I take some of my own connections within nutrition or fitness to also support them in their ultimate goal? And there's this mutual respect that goes on with that. And so I'm doing that with my own team. And it even came up in a little like short meeting with one of my teammates yesterday, is that, you know, she's going to start making pastries in-house for us. She was a pastry chef before. She has her own cake business on the side, and she's going to start making pastries in house. And I was like, like, what is your goal for yourself long term in your life? Like, what do you see for yourself? And she was like, this is why I love working here, because I'm not just working for you. And she was like, I have this goal to have this like bed and breakfast and, this event space where I'm making all these things. And I was like, my concept too is not far off from that dream. And like, I'm happy to also support you in your own endeavor. But like, if you want to find a home here and have this dream and I can somehow also be a part of making that happen, like, I want you to know that I'm happy to also entertain that idea. And we just had a really great like life conversation from it. So team development is a big part. It means so much to me, and I definitely see myself very passionate about that and wanting to get really into that over the next year and a half, 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, team development it's so rewarding, and it's rewarding because it's so real in a small business. You're not running a company with hundreds or thousands of employees, and in companies of all sizes, like two of the main reasons people leave is that they either feel like they've run into a ceiling or they're disconnected with the company, and I think you have such a opportunity, but also a responsibility as a small business owner to be able to ask those deep-rooted questions of like, what do you want out of life? Why are you here? Like, how can I better serve you? And it's like, that's not just how you keep employees. And we all know that retention of employees is that much more important than even the retention of your clients. But it's like you make them serve the mission better. It's like you create a better service, you create a better product, and it just feels like a better place to be when they see the same face every day. When someone's coming in for a cup of coffee or for a yoga class, and oh, by the way, that person is always smiling, always happy, always there to help, right? And every person they talk to has answers that are in line with the mission, and that's so important. So important.
Yeah. We're going to hang up their vision goal wall. Like the vision goal wall will live back by our big newspaper collage. It's also back by the meeting table. And it's strategically being placed back there because we're opening up that meeting table for reservations for anybody really, but we're getting a lot of interest from local businesses that just have meetings that they don't want to take clients in office and they want to guarantee themselves a quote unquote like private seat while they grab like a coffee or lunch, whatever it is. And I think that in that free time, I like to say is, when they're waiting for a client or after a client leaves and they're wrapping things up, or if they're looking for a point of conversation with clients and clients are kind of walking around the table, they now get to like see these vision and goals. And like, if I'm the head of finance at JP Morgan, like one of these, different groups at JP Morgan, and I see that an employee there that I see every single day that is hardworking, is here all the time, is kind, seems like to have like really good organizational skills. If I see them every single day there and I just now realize that they want to be within finance, I've now just created this connection for them that goes beyond just the girl that works at the coffee shop or the guy that's making their breakfast sandwich, And I think that that's really important in the long-term wellness of both the business and the person.
Well, Delaware is small and Greenville's even smaller. So yeah, I'm sure that is going to be an integral part to you kind of integrating in the community a way where you get to see the same faces all the time. So that's amazing. I love that. Now you obviously took a major liking to yoga fairly early on. You mentioned dropping out of nursing school and pursuing becoming a yoga teacher. But in that process, you also were very heavily focused on the mindfulness and meditation piece. How have those skill sets kind of kept you grounded throughout this whole process of starting the business?
My mantra throughout the entire construction process, when everything is out of your control and when the state is holding you up for things, literally everything's out of your control. You cannot work harder. You cannot make things move. I just kept saying, I am calm. And I would repeat it over and over in hysterics. I'd be crying and I would just be like, I am calm. I am calm. I am calm. And more recently, like around the soft open, right before the soft opening, it was, you are okay. You are okay. And I've found that meditation piece and the ability to self-regulate, um, I don't know how anybody is able to do this without it. And I think that if they do it without it, there's a reason why their business isn't flourishing, or people don't feel that security in their presence. Like my team constantly says to me, like, I feel so calm around you. I feel so prepared when I'm around you. And I'm not calm all the time up here. Like, I'm not always calm internally. I'm not always prepared. I don't always have the answer, but that external energy that somebody receives from you that makes them feel capable and safe, I think can only be possible if you are connected to yourself and able to self-regulate. And all of those days where I was in a panic and alone, and the joke and the running memory that goes by is this day when I was sitting on this like splinter covered pallet in my dusty box, I was calling it, and just crying because I was sharing a car with my husband, and I was literally alone until 7:30 p.m. I texted everybody I knew that could possibly come give me a ride. I had all this equipment dropped off, covered in pallets sitting out front of my location, no help from anybody or anything. Everybody was at work, and I just sat there and I cried. And my property manager's calling me, yelling at me that all this stuff is sitting out there, no help, just crying. And those horrible memories that I have, and those traumatic memories that I have throughout this process, I just kept doing my 5-5-7 breath. I kept coming back to putting my hand on my belly and my hand on my chest and just breathing and calming down. And I would be laughing by the end of it. I'd be like, this is not that bad. Like, things aren't that bad. You're okay. Things are okay. Like you're about to open this fucking coffee shop that everybody's going to flock to. Like, it's okay. Like, things aren't that bad. Yeah, so I mean, a big tool nonetheless, and I think it's only going to get more important as time goes on.
Yeah, and I mean, like, you mentioned something there, which is that, like, you were able to use these breathing techniques and other tools as a way to kind of ground yourself, but it didn't make everything go away. The problems were still going to exist, right? It didn't make everything flip to perfect, but you're able to kind of tune in and check in on yourself throughout that process, and in that way, you are the calm presence that your team needs. Because the reality is, your team's not starting this business for a reason, right? They need you to be able to be the filter for all of the crazy external inputs going on, so that, you can be the calm force. And I think that that's a very underrated skill, not just for business owners, but for people in general, is the ability to remain calm when everything around you is in pure chaos.
Yeah. And one of my, Max will tell you, one of our favorite memories together as a couple throughout this process was, there's not many great memories of being a couple throughout this process, but one of the memories that we kind of laugh about now is, it was when we didn't know if we were going to get the space. They weren't giving me what I wanted in my lease negotiation. And if they didn't give me an inch further financially, it just wasn't going to make sense to take the risk. And my investor was going to be out. And there's a lot of pressure there. And I was hysterical in the kitchen. Like, I felt like my dream was coming to an end, and that what was I going to do now? Was I just going to go back and like work for coffee shops? Like, what the heck was I going to do? I was falling apart. But I was more so fueled by this like out of my control defeat feeling. And Max just like looked at me in the kitchen, like kind of gave me this look, and I don't think he actually was giving me this look, but I perceived it, that he was looking at me like I felt bad for myself or that I was weak. And I brushed off my tears. I snorted out my snot, and I looked at him and I said, don't you dare look at me like I am weak, like I am not capable of doing this, like I am not ready to do this. And I'm screaming at him. And I'm like, I am crying because I'm strong, and because I'm upset, because I want this so fucking bad, and I'll be damned if somebody takes it away from me. And he just put his hands up and he's like, I was just letting you cry. And I was just being here. Like, that's all I was doing. I didn't give you a look. That's it. And I was like, you did, you gave me this look. And I was like, I just want you to know that if you see me cry, I am not weak. And, we laugh about it now, but I was like, man, that is like all encompassing of this entire thing, especially being a woman, is like, we naturally show our emotions more than men do. Right. And I'm sure there were countless times in opening your gym and, other scary risks that you took where you did want to just sit there and bawl your eyes out, but your tendency as a man was to hold it in and to pent it up and to go quiet or, divert elsewhere. But that feeling of a man looking at you like, you can't sit here and cry about this, was so fueling for me to also like become more passionate and figure things out, because I was like, I'll be damned. Like, I'll be damned if somebody looks at me and thinks that I'm not capable or ready to do this,
Yeah. Well, trust me, I am not one to hold back tears. So there have been plenty of tears shed throughout that process. Well, and what's funny is in that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I would like to say that there was probably also just a momentary experience of almost like a mirrored reflection of yourself. So in other words, like him looking at you like that, there was probably a very small hint of truth of catching yourself, pitying yourself. And you're like, that's where it's like your true self comes above that. You're like, no, you know what I mean? So it's like, you probably you were equally mad at yourself as much as you were mad at him in that moment, in recognizing that there was like a hair of that. And you're like, don't you dare let that sneak into this.
And it's so funny, like, your partners, especially your mirror, like every single person we come into contact with is a mirror. And, I think ego and shame are two things that I really love to read about and listen to podcasts about, because I'm so fascinated by how they always bubble up and tie into what you're doing in your current life and how you show up on a day-to-day basis. And that balance of like, you need a healthy amount of ego to succeed, right? That confidence can sometimes be perceived as having a large ego, because it is. And there's something that you have to deal with like shame coming in. And it's like the shame of like, am I being egotistical? Am I, the shame of like pushing my husband to the side during this process, right? And having to watch him struggle, but knowing that we were on the cusp of things not being that way. So for the long term, the ego and shame always go back and forth. And there was a lot of shame going on. And it's important to just kind of come back to yourself and lean into the bottom line and where you're going with everything.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things you and I have in common is that we didn't come to being business owners in a very traditional path. It wasn't like we had parents that did this, that handed us a bunch of money, that said, here are the exact steps that you need to take, or take over my company. We went through this in a very unorthodox way. And, one of the interesting things about emotions throughout that process is you have these 5, right? You have like glad, sad, mad, shame, fear, and it's like 4 of them are negative. So 4/5 of the time, you're either trying to better understand why that emotion is present, trying to fend it off, trying to explain it away. And then 1 out of 5 you get to experience, like, okay, I'm glad. And then it just dissipates so quickly, So I think it that can be a really, really difficult challenge throughout the process of starting a business, is like most of your emotions around everything, even though at surface level, and even though to everyone else outside of you, you look confident, it's like you are like with a ping pong paddle in your hand, just like negative emotion the whole time.
It's so true. I don't know. I think that you learn so much about yourself, and that's going to make or break you. I mean, you see yourself in the most raw, true, purest form. And like you said earlier about being a small business owner and having a team, it's much different. They get to be exposed to the realness and to the day-to-day of what you're experiencing while building this. And, some of my teammates in the future, and maybe even concept number 2, won't get to see me in this same light. They won't get to see me as messy, or maybe it's sometimes looking unorganized, or maybe, not having all of the paperwork together and all these things. They won't get to experience that. And there's something really special about that. And there's also something that's so extra raw about that that's hard for me to deal with. Like my employees the other night were like, hey, Katie, do you have our W-2 forms? Like, we got to like fill this like form out for our taxes. And I was like, right, taxes. Like, that's what we got to, that's what we got
Gotta
to come
pay
back to.
those.
Like, right, got to do that. Like, where are those forms? How do I get those forms? Like, there's things like that that, can bring up shame if I allow it, or can eat at my ego if I allow it. But then there's also, that part of you that has to come back to like, how can you show up and just be transparent, be authentic, lead with that authenticity and transparency, and like just come back to connection and doing the best you can.
I think one of the biggest shames of all is that, and just like being super unfortunate, is that when you start a business and you're doing this in an unorthodox way and you're coming from nothing, you don't have the energy, resources, and money to be able to document what's going on. But like what I would give, and I'm sure you feel the same way, if there was a camera crew that could have been present through every waking moment as you were starting that process, it would be just so incredibly motivating, one, for yourself, because in the process of starting business 2, 3, 4, 5, and up the ladder, but also for other people that are looking to start a business, to see kind of the rawness of the experiences that you had to go through, right? And the trials and tribulations throughout this whole process. And, you mentioned about sitting on the pallet, crying your eyes out because you have a bunch of equipment sitting outside, having someone calling you and yelling at you. It's like, those are the moments that like you will always remember, right? Because they're novel and they're just incredibly intense. So 10 years from now, when you look back, it's like, there's going to be plenty you'll forget, but there will absolutely be things you will be able to see with just like such a clear, vivid vision.
Yeah. And I was getting teary-eyed listening to you because I kept trying. Like, I kept coming back to my journal and I kept trying. Like, there's probably less than 10 pages total of journaling throughout this entire process that had anything to do with the coffee shop. And I would try my best, but I'd be falling asleep with the pen in my hand. I'd be like, I don't even like know what else to write about because there's so much I need to write about. And I feel like I could write a book, and I think it's because of that. You could write a book about your entire life, but nothing would actually hit the same as like somebody, like a camera crew following you around, because some of those moments, like crying on the pallet, I took a selfie that day and I sent it to some of my best friends, and I was like, this feels ridiculous taking a selfie while I'm crying, but I never want to forget this day. I never want to like forget this moment of there being fucking no one and nothing able to save me in this moment, and me struggling so hard. I never want to forget it. And I tried. People were like, document it all. And you're like, you think you can, but unless you're going to pay to hire somebody to follow you around, there's just not enough. There's not enough in you that can actually document the entire process. But I totally
That actually
agree.
gave me a good idea, like for the future, if we were to find somebody that was like an up and coming entrepreneur, right? When we're sitting on, decades of success and doing well, and being able to gift that to somebody else and say, hey, I know you're starting your business. I want to document this entire journey for you.
Yeah, I love that.
That would be so amazing.
That would be amazing. People would love that. I mean, it's like a home movie, like I don't know if you like ever watch home videos with your parents, but like I'm the weirdo that's always like, I want to watch home videos. Like, let's play home videos on Christmas morning. That's what I made my parents do, mostly selfishly to watch how cute I was as a child, but also because I will sit there and cry because there's something so, it's just real. And I want a home video of this entire experience, and even those moments of like, just like I don't know how to explain other than being like heartbroken, seeing the disconnect between my husband and I during this process, right? Like those very real moments where you are just like, just invisible people walking by each other every day, just like making it work. I mean, I still have a whole pile of boxes to my right now that are still existing in our home. We sold our dining room table and our dining set to like make space for boxes during the process. Like things that are like, yeah, that's a sacrifice. But like when you are walking around each other every day with two also very large dogs in a not so big house, like those microaggressions and tensions that build up, like all those types of memories I wish were caught on camera, because we would be that much more proud of ourselves for, getting through it and being able to look back and just being like, wow, we did it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
here.
it's hard to even show up for yourself in the way that
Yeah.
you in the way that you need to, and you are a version of yourself when you're going through something like that is so far gone from what your partner fell in love with and was used to dealing with on a regular basis. And just like the perils and ups and downs of starting a business are unpredictable. You as an individual are incredibly unpredictable when it comes to being in that state.
Yeah, it is. It's something very special. And I think that's also the part of like parenting. If it feels like a baby, like I am my ugliest going through this, but I'm also my most beautiful and my most like vibrant. Like I'm constantly looking like I'm glowing, even if I have a bag under my eye. It's like I'm so vibrant and glowing because I'm like doing everything that I'm like so passionate and in love with. My dreams are coming to life, and I'm busting my ass, and everything's so amazing. And I'm also like super snappy, and I have like such a low fuse of like what will make me like set off. So yeah, I think it's funny.
What was so funny was you were mentioning the home videos from the perspective of like just loving that documentation and like, wanting, like enjoying that experience so much. And for me, like, I always think of my home videos as like, why'd you procreate? Like, look at you, you were terrible, and like my only hope is that I'm having a girl first. So I'm like, okay, she'll probably be a little bit more, her temperament will probably be a bit more like Julia's and a little less like mine. I hope. But yeah, it was just a funny moment because I was thinking something totally different from you. Well, let's dive into some of the, the details here. So, you run the coffee shop throughout the morning and through the afternoon. What time do you typically shut that down and make the transition into yoga?
So Monday through Friday, we're a cafe from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Right now, we're going to transition to 2 p.m. Yoga is only Monday through Thursday. I intentionally left the schedule open on the evenings of Friday, Saturday, Sunday for other events and workshops and pop-up classes. But Monday through Thursday, our first yoga class starts at 5:15. And our last one, it ends at 8 p.m. So 5:15 to 6:15 is a slow flow class. And then 6:30 to 7:30 is a yin/restorative. And then from 7:30 to 8, we actually have a complimentary meditation that's open up to the public. And we collect donations for different nonprofits of the team's choice every single month. So it's an interesting transition, and we start yoga next week. But right now the time frame has been like, okay, we're practicing like, how do we close the store and how do we transition it into feeling like a yoga and meditation space within an hour? Like how do we do that? How do we functionally close a kitchen, close an espresso bar, close a retail area and a full dining area, and then transition it into a yoga and meditation studio within an hour, which has been really, really interesting. And we're getting better at it every single day. And I know we're going to be ready next week, but yeah, that's the transition and schedule.
I would love to see your SOPs. Like for being able to do that, I would love to see that start to finish.
Very interesting.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, it's not common, but that's what makes what you're doing unique, is that it is uncommon, and then that includes the responsibilities of the workers. I'm sure it's the first time they've ever had to do something like that as well.
Yeah. I think they're enjoying it, which is really, it's also refreshing to see. Like they all were drawn to working for Karma specifically because it was more of a social good than it was just working, quote unquote, just working for a coffee shop. And, I was lucky to work at different coffee shops and experience the different types of employees that will come in. And I think people kind of envision coffee shop workers as being like kind of misfitty, like people just don't know what they're doing with their life, don't know what they want out of life, or, assume that all they want to do, quote unquote, is work in a coffee shop. So I think it's been really interesting to see what crowd I've gotten in, and as employees and team members, and I've gotten really lucky that I've gotten people that care about the fact that we are an all white space, which means our attention to cleanliness has to be tenfold than any other coffee shop. And then our attention to making this a space that is calming and inviting and filled with connection is so much harder to actually perform than it seems. Like, part of their instruction as employees is like, if you see somebody lingering around the counter that maybe looks like they want to chat, or maybe looks like they have something on their mind, your role, your duty, your job is to connect with them in that moment. It's to connect with them. It's to look at them and be like, how's your day going? And thank them for coming in and try and spark up conversation with them. It's not just to let them exist in this busy space and just leave. It's in their role and their obligation to connect with them on a deeper level. So it's been really cool to watch them actually enjoy like lighting an incense, lighting the candles for yoga, and like moving the furniture to the back of the room to clear out that space. And it's been really cool. It's been really cool to watch them enjoy that extra responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I look forward to for you so much is, right now you are the guide, right? And kind of the lantern for every person that's inside of that place. And, they rely very heavily on you still to kind of help push them in the right direction, lead the mission, lead the vision, and, just basically be the guiding light in terms of the direction of the company. And, you're going to get to a point where that place is run so efficiently and so well that you're able to kind of step foot in there and be the fly on the wall and just observe. And like, for instance, for me, hard bat now 11 and a half years in, like there are times I walk in and I'm only going to be there for like an hour. Maybe it's just to work out. And it's like, to my right, there's personal training going on, right? There's intros going on. There's a class going on. There's a youth class going on. And it's like, I'll go in the back and there's a meeting going on. And I'm just like, it's just so amazing to be able to watch it exist, right? It's like it's its own organism, and it's just going through all the motions. And I can't wait for that for you. Because I know even if that could exist right now, your mind would make you be involved. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's so hard to kind of like be able to zoom out and just like observe. But when you do get to that point, it is so incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah. And even now it's like that like meditation and mindfulness it reminds me to be in the present moment as often as possible, and to detach from outcomes, right? And to detach from the work that still needs to be done. And so as often as I can, when I'm in the space, I try to stand there or sit on the sofa and just like look at things in awe, as if it's all perfect, right? And envision it as like, it's perfect the way it is right now. And like, yeah, there's 100 things that are still changing. We're redoing our shelving. We're adding another rug or two. Or, there's all these like little things that are changing that aren't actually quote unquote perfect, but I try to view it as perfect. And it really helps me to admire the space and to continue feeling like a loving energy into the space. I'm not critiquing the space on a day-to-day basis. I'm not adding to that pessimism of, well, I won't love this place until it has this, or I'm not going to feel happy about the way things are going here until blank. Like, your job, and I believe this as an owner, and you might feel slightly differently, but my role as an owner is to always be dancing on that thin line of being in the space, working in the business on the day-to-day operations, and being on the outside of like, how can I facilitate the broader vision? And I think more of the work that helps the vision be embedded into a community, and what gets a community to recognize your space as one thing and not something else, is more so done in the time that you're not in the space. And I think that that's a hard balance. Like, the more time that I spend behind the counter, the more time that takes me away from the time off counter, right? And as an owner, not as a manager, but as an owner, that's a hard place to find a groove in. And right now I feel like I'm doing a really good job at being kind of touch and go, with yoga, community events, marketing. Like that's me. And I need as much off counter time as possible to rest, to make sure that I have a creative brain that's full and capable, and then to also actually take action and be able to facilitate those things without being pulled in 10 different directions. But that ability to sit there and just be in awe of like this, what you were saying, organism, just like flowing the way that you kind of imagined and maybe differently in some ways than you thought it was going to, but it's still so amazing. It's such a special feeling to have.
Yeah, well, I'm going to give you a compliment and at the same time take one away from myself, which is you have a much better head on your shoulders going into this than I did at 22. And, I think the way that you spoke about the need to be involved with the business, but also to kind of pull away and be able to work on the business rather than just constantly in it. I mean, that's what allows the brand to become the thing that's recognized and not Katie. And that's a really important distinction because, if people associate the brand with you, well, then if you're not present, the brand isn't there. And it's like your ability to work on the business from the outside looking in and be able to make the brand the thing that people recognizes. It's like, that's when it becomes special and allows you to do the things necessary to continue to work on it.
It's and I think that that's something that came from experience. I mean, with nutrition coaching, I started, I was getting such demand and influx of clients that I tried to hire other coaches, right? And they got like no clients out of it. And I was like, what's going on? I thought people wanted this messaging of like mindfulness and like functional nutrition. Like that's what people wanted. But I realized people wanted me. And it's so hard to make a business flourish if people only want you. And you know that too from like, that's like if only people want to take Derek's class, if people only want to personal train with Derek, that's an issue, right? Because that means it's not hardbat that people want, it's Derek. And that is really hard because it's a good thing for you in a lot of ways. It's like a compliment to you, to the owner, to the face, but it doesn't help the business in any way. And I learned my lesson through functional nutrition fitness was like, I can't be the face. I can't have people want me. And I can't have it be that like people are trying to figure out when I'm working to go to Karma. Like your best experience shouldn't be when I'm there. Like, yeah, it should be just as good when I'm there. Like, yeah, it might be nice to see me and connect with me and whatever else, but I want you to go into Karma when I'm not there for a week straight and be like, I had an amazing experience every single day that I was in there, and it looked exactly the same as the way that you leave it, the way that you touch it, and it felt like you when I was there. That is the difference from going from like, this is mine to this is ours,
Yeah, well, and the most selfish thing you can do as a business owner is to hoard all the answers and the secrets from your employees. I mean, I think one of the fears that is common amongst business owners is, what if I train my employees to be as good at me through my, array of different skill sets, and they take those skills and they up and leave. Right. And what I always do is I try to provide a reframing, which is, what if you don't train your employees and they stay? That to me is a 100-fold difference than if you train them and they leave. Like that is inevitably going to happen over the existence of your business. And if you have a growth mindset and a mindset of abundance, you can still be happy for those people. Now, if they do it in a screwed up way, that's a different conversation. But if it happens organically and it's something where someone genuinely comes to you and they're like, I've loved my time with you, I kind of want to go out and do my own thing, you can be supportive of that individual, because something tells me the culture that you've created is going to allow you to bring someone else in, right? But the thought of not training your employees and running a subpar product purely because of the fact that like you egotistically want to hold on to all of the answers and be the best in the building, that's like the most selfish thing that you can do for your business.
Yep. It does nothing for anybody to be in this like limited belief mindset and scarcity and trying to hold on to all of it to keep it sacredly yours. Like, it's really hard to let people into your vision. It's really hard to let people try to do your vision, right? Because you have to watch them get messy. You have to watch them do it wrong 100,000 times, quote unquote wrong, right? It's your version of wrong. And you have to watch them royally fuck up your vision. in order for them to get to what your vision is. Like nobody magically can just do things the way that you are imagining them to do it, and they can't read your mind, and they can't on one try get it right. So it's really hard to do, but it's so worth it.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's through those experiences for your employees that you're able to teach them the lessons, and also you're going to learn things along the way yourself. Like sometimes people come in with great ideas, and sometimes things are done in a certain way that are different from what you originally had intended, and you're like, oh wow, I actually kind of like that. So it's I mean, speaking back to this kind of like like organism that we spoke of, it's like that it takes time, it evolves, and what Kaffe Karma will be in 5 years. Like, I think people oftentimes overestimate what they, can do or change in a year and completely underestimate what they can do in 5 or 10. And it's like, you really have no idea where you're going to be in 5 years. So don't get too strict and regimented about every little thing in the business, because it is going to be something that would almost be unrecognizable in a 5-year time span.
Yep. I mean, you like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, was like, you think the location that you wanted, or you think that you wanted this at a certain time. Like you thought all these things. You thought that you wanted I'm sure that your original business plan looks nothing like what it
don't even want to know,
right?
I was writing my business plan while I was still in college. Like, it was ridiculous.
It's completely different in the way that you thought your life would look. I thought that I wanted 6 kids, and I thought that I was just gonna like, I don't know what I thought, right? And I think that's the part, is that like I constantly say that I'm like, I don't know what I thought, because I don't. Like every single day, my thought changes, and you're constantly maturing with experience every single day. And I'm like, I can't wait for 30. Like, I can't wait for 40. Because like the things that I learn on a micro level every single day, I feel like I'm like aging beautifully because of how much I'm experiencing, like it makes me so excited to see who I am at 40 and what karma is going to look like by then, and what the hell I'm even doing. Maybe I sold the business at that point. I don't know. But those things are really exciting, and it's just awesome.
Absolutely. Well, hey, I 1000% love everything that you're doing. I'm super proud of you. And from the outside looking in, it's been really special. I mean, I'm always on board to the umpth degree when I'm, cheering from the sidelines, watching another business owner create something that's unique and special to them. So it's been nothing short of amazing watching you create everything over there at Kaffe Karma. We're back online.
Back online. So I'm super proud of you. So back.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I'm super proud of you, and, watching you from the outside looking in, it's just so amazing watching someone be able to take a dream and a vision and create it into something that is special and unique. And you should be proud of yourself, because it is, it takes a lot of hard work. And as you said in the beginning of the podcast, not everyone has thick enough skin to be able to deal with it. So be proud of the space, be proud of the vision, be proud of the business, and you've got a lot of amazing things coming your way.
Thanks, Derek. It was so nice to chat about it. And I can't wait to see you guys in Karma in 5 years, and we can also laugh about this podcast at that time.
Oh, you know it. Well, hey, tell the audience a little bit more about where they can find out about you and where they can find Kaffe Karma.
If you guys want snippets into my occasional life, and I finally have time to journal about it, you can find me at Katie Kutler on Instagram, KATIE KUTLER. And you can find Kaffe Karma on Instagram, Facebook, website, everything at KAFFE.KARMA on Instagram, and it's kaffekarma.com.
Awesome. Well, Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.